The prison ship Void's Edge drifted through the darkness of space like a metal coffin, its hull scarred by countless battles. Inside its cramped cells, the galaxy's most dangerous criminals waited for their fate. Some would be sold as slaves, others executed, and the lucky ones might find work as mercenaries for the highest bidder. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the small window of his cell, watching the stars crawl by. The human had been imprisoned for 3 months now, ever since the Galactic Council had branded him a war criminal. They called him a monster for what he did on Kepler 7, but Marcus knew the truth. He had saved thousands of innocent lives by destroying that weapons facility, even if it meant breaking every rule of war. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace. Through the narrow corridor, Marcus could hear the heavy footsteps of Crithari guards. These lizard-like aliens stood 9 feet tall and had scales harder than most armor. They ruled this section of the galaxy with an iron fist, and their prison ships were notorious for never losing a prisoner. "Feeding time," growled Guard Captain Vex as he approached Marcus's cell. The Crithari's yellow eyes gleamed with hatred. Humans were new to galactic society, having only made first contact 50 years ago, and most aliens still viewed them as primitive upstarts. Marcus took the bowl of gray slop without complaint. He had learned long ago that showing weakness only invited more abuse. The other prisoners watched him carefully. There was Zara, a blue-skinned Nexian assassin who could kill with her thoughts. Next to her sat Gork, a massive rock creature from the asteroid belt who had crushed an entire police station with his bare hands. At the far end was something Marcus couldn't identify, a writhing mass of tentacles that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. But it was the creature in the corner that drew Marcus's attention. In the shadows of the farthest cell lay what appeared to be a dragon. Its scales were deep purple, almost black, and it was easily 20 feet long, even curled up. The beast's breathing was labored, and Marcus could see infected wounds covering its hide. This was no ordinary prisoner. This was a draconian void hunter, one of the most feared predators in the galaxy. The dragon's kind were said to be impossibly ancient and intelligent, capable of surviving in the vacuum of space and hunting starships like Earth sharks hunted fish. They had terrorized trade routes for millennia, until the Galactic Council had finally declared them an endangered species. Killing one was illegal, but capturing one alive was worth more money than most planets produced in a year. "That one's been like that for weeks," whispered Zara, noticing Marcus's stare. The Crithari caught it near the Veil Nebula. "Been torturing it ever since, trying to break its spirit before the sale." Marcus frowned. Even from his cell he could see the dragon was dying. Its wounds were festering and no medical care was being provided. The Crithari were letting it suffer on purpose, probably thinking it was funny to watch such a mighty creature waste away. That night, as the artificial lights dimmed to simulate darkness, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He had spent years as a military medic before becoming a mercenary. He knew infection when he saw it, and he knew that dragon wouldn't last another week without treatment. Using skills learned during his escape training, Marcus began working on his cell's lock. The Crithari used electronic systems, but they were old and poorly maintained. After 2 hours of careful manipulation with a piece of metal torn from his food bowl, he heard the soft click of success. The corridor was empty except for the sleeping prisoners. Marcus moved silently toward the dragon's cell, his bare feet making no sound on the cold metal floor. Up close, the creature was even more magnificent and pitiful than he had imagined. Its scales, which should have shimmered with an inner light, were dull and cracked. Several deep gashes across its flank were oozing a greenish fluid. The dragon's massive head turned toward him, and Marcus found himself staring into eyes like molten gold. There was intelligence there, ancient and deep, along with pain and resignation. The creature expected nothing from this human except perhaps more torment. Instead, Marcus tore strips from his prison uniform and began cleaning the wounds with water from his drinking cup. The dragon tensed at first, then gradually relaxed as it realized the human was trying to help. Marcus worked through the night, using everything he knew about field medicine to fight the infection. When the lights came back on, Marcus was back in his cell, pretending to sleep. The dragon was sitting upright for the first time in weeks, its breathing easier. Guard Captain Vex noticed the improvement and was furious. He stormed through the prison block, demanding to know what had happened. "Nothing happened," said Zara innocently. "Maybe your prizefighter is tougher than you thought." Vex's suspicions fell on Marcus immediately. The human was known for his medical training, and several guards had noticed his interest in the dragon. That evening, Vex personally searched Marcus's cell and found the torn fabric missing from his uniform. "Thought you could play doctor, did you?" Vex snarled, his claws extended. "Let's see how you like some personal attention." The beating was savage. Vex used his claws to open long cuts across Marcus's back and arms, then left him bleeding on the floor of his cell. The other prisoners watched in silence, knowing that interference would only make things worse. But the dragon saw everything. As Marcus lay unconscious, fighting for his life just as the dragon had been, something stirred in the ancient creature's heart. For the first time in its long existence, it had witnessed true compassion from another being. This human had risked everything to ease a stranger's suffering, expecting nothing in return. The dragon began to sing. It was barely a whisper at first, a low harmonic that seemed to come from the ship's hull itself. The other prisoners looked around in confusion as the sound grew stronger. It was the death song of the draconian void hunters, a mourning cry that could carry across star systems. But this dragon was not dying. It was grieving for the broken human who had shown it kindness in a universe full of cruelty. The song would continue for 3 days, growing stronger with each passing hour, until it reached beyond the prison ship and into the vast darkness of space. Others were listening, and they were coming. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness for 2 days. Each time he woke, the dragon's song filled his ears like a lullaby made of starlight and sorrow. The other prisoners had grown quiet, some even respectful as they listened to the ancient melody. Even the Crithari guards seemed subdued by the haunting sound. On the 3rd day, Marcus managed to stay awake long enough to really look at the dragon. The creature had positioned itself as close to Marcus's cell as possible, its great golden eyes never leaving the injured human. When their gazes met, the dragon's song shifted, becoming softer, more personal. It was trying to comfort him. "Why?" Marcus whispered through cracked lips. "Why are you singing for me?" The dragon's massive head tilted slightly, and Marcus realized it understood him perfectly. These creatures were said to be telepathic, capable of learning any language simply by touching a mind. But more than that, Marcus saw something in those ancient eyes that took his breath away. The dragon was mourning him as if he were already dead, grieving for a kindness that had cost everything and gained nothing. Zara approached the bars between their cells. "Do you know what you've done, human?" she asked quietly. "That's not just any song. That's a Threndalic, a soul bond lament. Dragons only sing it for their mates and offspring." Marcus tried to sit up, but pain shot through his torn back. "I just cleaned its wounds. Nothing more, to you maybe, but to that ancient mind, you showed something it has never experienced before. Dragons live for thousands of years in complete solitude. They hunt alone, die alone, and trust no one. You changed that." The ship suddenly lurched, throwing everyone against the walls of their cells. Emergency lights began flashing as the captain's voice echoed through the corridors in the guttural Crithari language. Marcus didn't understand the words, but the panic in the captain's voice was universal. Guard Captain Vex came running down the corridor, his scales pale with fear. He was shouting orders at the other guards, pointing frantically at sensor readings on his handheld device. When he saw Marcus awake, his yellow eyes blazed with fury. "This is your fault, human," Vex snarled, grabbing the cell bars. "Your pet singing has brought them here." "Brought who here?" Marcus managed to ask. Vex's answer was drowned out by another ship-wide shudder, this one much stronger. The lights flickered and went out completely, leaving them in darkness broken only by the red glow of emergency strips. In that darkness, the dragon's song seemed to fill the entire universe. "The pack," whispered Zara, her voice filled with awe and terror. The dragon called its pack. Marcus had heard stories about draconian packs during his military briefings, but most officers dismissed them as myths. Dragons were supposed to be solitary creatures, meeting others of their kind only to mate before separating again. But the stories spoke of rare instances when dragons would band together, usually in response to a threat to one of their own. The ship's hull began to vibrate with a sound Marcus felt in his bones rather than heard. It was the sound of massive bodies moving through space, their scales scraping against the prison ship's armor. Through the small windows, he caught glimpses of enormous shapes blotting out the stars. The Crithari crew was in full panic now. Orders were being screamed over the intercom system, but it was clear they had no idea how to handle this situation. The Void's Edge was a prison transport, not a warship. It had enough firepower to intimidate escaped prisoners, but nothing that could challenge even a single adult dragon. From the sounds echoing through the hull, there were at least a dozen of them out there. The first breach came near the ship's engine section. The dragons didn't bother with airlocks or docking procedures. They simply tore through the hull like it was made of paper, their claws designed to pierce the armor of much larger vessels. The atmospheric alarms joined the cacophony of noise as air rushed out through the holes. Marcus could hear the Crithari crew fighting desperately in the corridors above. Energy weapons discharged in rapid bursts, followed by screams that were cut short with terrifying suddenness. These dragons weren't just rescuing their packmate, they were systematically hunting down every Crithari on the ship. The dragon in the prison block had stopped singing. Instead, it was making a low rumbling sound that Marcus realized was communication. It was talking to the others, guiding them through the ship's layout. After 20 minutes of violence, the sounds of battle faded to silence. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside the prison block. Not the quick, nervous steps of Crithari guards, but something much larger and more deliberate. The emergency lights revealed 3 dragons moving through the narrow space, their massive forms barely fitting in the corridors designed for smaller species. These newcomers were different from the captive dragon. Their scales gleamed with health and inner fire, shifting from deep purple to brilliant silver as they moved. Their eyes held the cold intelligence of apex predators who had ruled the void for millennia. The largest dragon approached the captive's cell and began examining the lock with surprising delicacy. Its claws, each one longer than Marcus's arm, worked with the precision of surgical instruments. The electronic lock sparked and died, and the cell door swung open. The captive dragon emerged slowly, its wounds still evident, but its bearing proud once again. The reunited dragons touched noses briefly, a gesture so tender it seemed impossible from such fearsome creatures. Then all 4 dragons turned to look at Marcus. He expected death. These were wild draconian void hunters, creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for eons. The fact that he had helped one of their own might earn him a quick death instead of a slow one. But Marcus doubted it would spare his life entirely. Instead, the largest dragon approached his cell and began working on his lock with the same careful precision. "What are they doing?" Marcus asked weakly. Zara was pressed against her cell bars, watching in amazement. "I think they're freeing you." "That's impossible. Dragons don't save other species. Dragons don't sing soul bond laments for other species either," she replied. "You've changed something fundamental here, human. Rules that have existed for millions of years." The lock clicked open and Marcus's cell door swung wide. The largest dragon stepped back, waiting. Its golden eyes held no threat, only a patient invitation. The other dragons had positioned themselves around the prison block, but they weren't threatening the other prisoners. They were simply waiting. Marcus tried to stand and nearly collapsed from the pain of his wounds. Immediately, the dragon he had helped moved forward, lowering its great head so Marcus could lean against its neck for support. The creature's scales were warm against his skin, and he could feel the steady rhythm of its breathing. "Where are you taking me?" Marcus asked. The dragon couldn't answer in words, but somehow Marcus understood. They were taking him away from this place of pain and captivity. Beyond that, he would have to trust in the bond that had formed between them, a connection that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about dragons. As they began to move toward the corridor, Marcus heard Zara call out behind him, "Human, what should we tell them when they find this ship?" Marcus looked back at the other prisoners, still trapped in their cells while the dragons focused only on him. It didn't seem right to leave them behind, but he also knew he was in no condition to argue with creatures that could tear battleships apart. "Tell them," he said slowly, "that sometimes kindness is repaid with kindness, no matter how impossible it seems." The journey through the damaged prison ship was like moving through a nightmare made real. The dragons had been thorough in their assault. Crithari bodies lay scattered through the corridors, their scales dulled by death. But Marcus noticed something strange. The crew quarters and common areas were destroyed, but the ship's life support systems remained intact. The dragons had been selective in their violence, targeting only those who posed a threat. The dragon supporting Marcus moved with careful grace, adjusting its pace to match his injured shuffle. Behind them, the other 3 dragons followed in formation, their movements coordinated like a military unit. Marcus realized these creatures weren't just intelligent. They were tactically sophisticated, capable of planning and executing complex operations. They reached a massive breach in the ship's hull, torn open like a flower blooming in reverse. Beyond the jagged edges lay the infinite darkness of space. Dotted with more dragons than Marcus had ever imagined existed, they hung motionless in the void, their scales reflecting distant starlight waiting for their packmates to complete the rescue. "I can't survive in space," Marcus said weakly, touching the dragon's neck. "I need air, pressure, warmth." The dragon he had helped turned its great head toward him, and suddenly Marcus felt a tingling sensation in his mind. It wasn't painful, just strange, like someone gently probing through his memories. The dragon was learning about human physiology, understanding his limitations. One of the other dragons moved forward, carrying something in its claws. It was a Krathari environmental suit, stripped from a dead crew member and quickly modified. The suit's life support systems were still functional, though the size would be awkward for a human frame. With surprising gentleness, the dragons helped Marcus into the suit. Their claws, capable of tearing through starship armor, handled the delicate work of sealing joints and checking connections with the precision of trained engineers. Within minutes, Marcus was enclosed in the bulky suit, breathing recycled air and listening to the steady hum of life support systems. The dragon he had helped positioned itself beneath him, and Marcus understood he was meant to climb onto its back. The creature's scales provided natural handholds, and despite his injuries, he managed to secure himself between the dragon's massive shoulder blades. Then they were flying. Marcus had traveled through space many times, but always inside the protective hull of a ship. This was different. He was riding a living creature through the cosmos, feeling every movement as the dragon's powerful wings pushed against the solar wind. Around them, the pack moved in perfect formation, dozens of dragons creating a living constellation against the stars. The sensation was beyond anything he had ever experienced. The dragon's movements were fluid and graceful, each wing beat propelling them forward with impossible speed. Marcus could feel the creature's heartbeat beneath him, strong and steady, and somehow comforting despite their alien nature. They traveled for hours through the void, passing asteroid fields and gas clouds that glowed with their own inner light. The pack seemed to know exactly where they were going, following invisible currents in space that only they could sense. Marcus tried to stay awake, but the combination of his injuries and the rhythmic motion of flight eventually lulled him into unconsciousness. He woke to find himself in a place that shouldn't exist. The dragons had brought him to what appeared to be a massive space station, but unlike any structure built by the known galactic civilizations, its architecture was organic, flowing like frozen music through the darkness. Spires twisted upward in impossible spirals, while bridges arched between sections with the delicate beauty of spiderwebs made from metal and crystal. A dragon city, Marcus whispered to himself, hardly believing his eyes. The station was ancient beyond measure, its surfaces worn smooth by eons of use, but it was far from abandoned. Dragons moved through the corridors and chambers like living rivers of light, their scales creating shifting patterns of color against the walls. There had to be thousands of them here, maybe tens of thousands. Marcus's dragon, he had started thinking of the creature as his during the journey, landed on a broad platform near the station's center. Other dragons gathered around them, but kept a respectful distance. Their golden eyes studied Marcus with curiosity rather than hostility. Though he could sense their uncertainty, he was probably the first human ever to see this place. Several dragons approached, these ones even larger than those who had rescued him. Their scales were different too, shifting through colors Marcus had no names for, hues that seemed to exist beyond the normal spectrum of light. These were the Pack Elders, creatures so ancient they might have witnessed the birth of stars. His dragon lowered its head respectfully as the elders approached. A complex conversation began, conducted in harmonics too low for human ears to hear. Marcus felt the vibrations through his suit and the dragon's body, but couldn't understand the meaning. The largest elder stepped forward and fixed Marcus with eyes like molten gold. Suddenly, the tingling sensation returned to his mind, but stronger this time. The elder was probing deep into his memories, not just learning about human physiology, but examining his entire history. Marcus saw his own life flash by like a movie playing at high speed. His childhood on Earth, his military training, his years as a medic saving lives in battlefield hospitals. The elder saw everything, His heroic moments and his failures, his kindness and his anger. The events on Kepler-7 that had branded him a war criminal. When the mental probe withdrew, Marcus gasped and nearly fell from his dragon's back. The elders began another harmonic conversation, their voices creating complex musical patterns that seemed to make the station's walls resonate in response. Finally, his dragon turned its great head toward him. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in Marcus's mind, bypassing his ears entirely. They debate your fate, small healer. My pack has never taken a non-dragon into the deep sanctuary. Some believe you should be returned to your own kind, memory cleansed of what you have seen. Others argue that the soul bond I have sung grants you protection under ancient law. Marcus was so shocked by the telepathic communication that it took him a moment to process the words. You can talk to me? I have learned your speech patterns from your mind. It is a crude form of communication compared to the song, but adequate for simple concepts. I am called Starweaver in your tongue, though my true name cannot be spoken by vocal cords. What's a soul bond? Marcus asked. The Nexian prisoner mentioned it, but I don't understand. Starweaver's mental voice carried undertones of sadness and wonder. It is something that has not occurred in 10,000 years of our history. Dragons do not form emotional attachments to other species. We are apex predators, solitary hunters who trust nothing and no one. But when you tended my wounds, expecting nothing in return, you awakened something in me that our race had forgotten existed, compassion for a non-dragon. The elders' conversation had grown more animated, their harmonic voices rising and falling in complex patterns. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but he could sense the disagreement. What happens if they decide against me? He asked. You will be returned to the nearest human colony with your memories intact but altered. You will remember being rescued by human allies, not dragons. The pack's existence must remain secret. And if they decide for me? Starweaver was quiet for a long moment. Then you become the first human to join a dragon pack. You would live among us, learn our ways, share in our hunts and our songs. But you could never return to your own kind. The bond, once fully formed, cannot be broken by distance or time. Marcus looked around at the impossible beauty of the Dragon City, at creatures that had ruled the cosmos for millions of years before humans had even learned to make fire. It was a choice between exile among gods and freedom among his own species, if the Galactic Council didn't simply execute him for war crimes. The elders reached a decision. Their harmony shifted to a single complex chord that made the entire station ring like a bell. Marcus felt the sound in his bones, in his soul, and somehow he understood what it meant even before Starweaver translated. The eldest has spoken. The soul bond is recognized under the ancient laws. You are granted sanctuary among the pack. But the choice to stay or leave remains yours alone. No dragon will hold you against your will, but if you choose to stay, the transformation will be complete. Transformation? Starweaver's golden eyes held depths of meaning Marcus couldn't fathom. To truly join the pack, you must become something more than human. It has never been attempted, but the eldest believes it is possible. You would retain your memories, your personality, your essential self, but your body would be changed to survive in our realm. Marcus stared at the assembled dragons, creatures of legend and nightmare who had offered him something no human had ever been given, acceptance into their ancient society. But the cost would be his humanity itself. Marcus spent 3 days in the Dragon City, recovering from his injuries while contemplating the impossible choice before him. The dragons had given him quarters in one of the station's smaller chambers, a space carved from what looked like crystallized starlight. The walls pulsed gently with their own inner glow, and the air somehow tasted of distant suns and cosmic winds. Starweaver visited him regularly, bringing food synthesized by the station's ancient systems and engaging in long conversations about human and dragon culture. Marcus learned that the dragons had been watching galactic civilization for millennia, studying the rise and fall of countless species while remaining hidden in the deep void. Your people interest us, Starweaver explained during one of their talks. Most species become predictable after a few centuries of observation. They follow patterns: expansion, conflict, stagnation, decline. But humans continue to surprise us with their capacity for both cruelty and compassion. Which did I show you? Marcus asked. Both. You destroyed a weapons facility knowing it would brand you a criminal, showing cruelty toward your enemies but compassion for innocents. Then you tended my wounds despite gaining nothing from the act. Your species contains contradictions that fascinate the elders. During his recovery, Marcus met other members of the pack. He discovered that dragons weren't just solitary hunters as galactic intelligence believed, but a complex society with roles and hierarchies spanning thousands of years. There were singers who maintained the pack's oral history and harmonic memories, navigators who could read the quantum currents between stars, and shapers who crafted the living architecture of their hidden cities. The most intriguing were the Watchers, dragons who had spent centuries studying other species, learning their languages and customs while remaining completely undetected. They were the ones who had confirmed that humans were different from the typical galactic civilizations. Your people have only been in space for 50 years, explained a Watcher named Void Whisper, yet already you have produced more acts of genuine heroism and sacrifice than we have seen from most species in their first 1,000 years, among the stars. We've also started 3 wars and been branded as warmongers by half the galaxy, Marcus pointed out. Yes, but even your wars are different. Other species fight for territory, resources, or dominance. Humans fight for ideas, freedom, justice, protection of the innocent. It is both admirable and terrifying. On the 4th day, the eldest summoned Marcus to the station's heart, a vast chamber where the original pack mothers had supposedly first gathered millions of years ago. The space was so large that its far walls disappeared into misty distance, and the ceiling was a living map of the galaxy, with tiny lights marking the locations of every dragon pack. The eldest was ancient beyond comprehension. Her scales had turned the color of deep space itself, so dark they seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. She was easily 3 times the size of Starweaver, and when she spoke, Marcus felt her words in his very bones. Human child. Her mental voice carried the weight of eons. You have brought change to something that has not changed in 10 million years. The pack song now carries new harmonics, frequencies of compassion that we had forgotten existed. Some of my children believe this is dangerous. Others see it as evolution. Marcus stood as straight as his healing injuries would allow. What do you believe, eldest? I believe that stagnation is death and change is life. We dragons have ruled the deep void for so long that we forgot why we began the great hunt. We became apex predators without purpose, beautiful and terrible, and ultimately empty. Your small act of kindness has reminded us that there is more to existence than survival and dominance. The eldest gestured with one massive claw toward the living star map above them. Look upon our domain, human child. 13 major packs spanning the galaxy, over 200,000 dragons in total. We could sweep aside the Galactic Council and all its member species if we chose. We have the power to reshape civilization itself. Yet for 10,000 years we have done nothing but hunt and sing and drift through the empty places. Why? Marcus asked. Because we lost our way. We became so focused on being perfect predators that we forgot what we were hunting for. Purpose. Connection. Something greater than ourselves. Your species, barely 50 years old among the stars, understands these concepts better than we who have ruled space for millions of years. The eldest lowered her great head until she was eye level with Marcus. Her ancient gaze held depths of wisdom and sadness that made him feel like a child. The transformation I offer is not just about changing your body to survive among us. It is about becoming a bridge between our peoples, the first of a new kind of being that combines human compassion with dragon power. But the choice must be yours alone, and you must understand the consequences. What consequences? You would become immortal by human standards, living for thousands of years. You would gain abilities that would make you godlike among your own species. Flight through vacuum, strength to crush starship hulls, senses that can track prey across star systems. But you would also become something that is neither fully human nor fully dragon. You would belong completely to neither world. Marcus thought about his old life, the military service, the mercenary work, the constant struggle against injustice that had ultimately landed him in a prison ship. Then he thought about Starweaver's song of grief, about creatures ancient beyond measure, who had forgotten how to feel compassion until one broken human reminded them. There's something else, he said slowly, something you haven't told me about why this matters so much. The eldest's mental voice carried a note of approval. Perceptive as we hoped. Yes, there is more. The galaxy is changing, human child. New threats are emerging from the void beyond our borders, things that make the old wars between council species seem like children's games. The packs have remained hidden and separate for too long. When the darkness comes, as it surely will, dragon and human and all the civilized species must stand together or fall alone. You're talking about an alliance. More than that, we are talking about evolution, the birth of something new that can face what is coming. You would be the first but not the last. If the transformation succeeds, if you can truly bridge our species, then others might follow. Human volunteers who choose to become something greater, dragons who learn to value connection over isolation. Marcus walked to the chamber's edge and looked out at the dragon city spread below. Thousands of magnificent creatures moved through spaces of impossible beauty, each one a living weapon capable of devastating entire fleets. Yet they spent their time creating art and music and poetry that no other species would ever see. How long do I have to decide? The Galactic Council has issued a system-wide bounty for your capture, the eldest replied. They believe you died when the prison ship was destroyed, but that fiction will not last forever. If you choose to leave, it must be soon. If you choose to stay, the transformation must begin within days, or your human physiology will reject the changes. That night, as artificial stars wheeled overhead in the chamber's ceiling, Marcus made his choice. But it wasn't the decision that even he expected to make. He found Starweaver in one of the station's meditation gardens, a place where crystalline trees grew in patterns that somehow made music when the cosmic wind passed through them. I want to propose something different, Marcus said. Something that might serve both our peoples better than making me into some kind of hybrid. Starweaver turned his great golden eyes toward the human. Speak your thoughts, Bond brother. Instead of transforming me, teach me. Send me back to human space as an ambassador. Let me prepare my people for what's coming and for the possibility of alliance with the packs the galaxy needs. To know that dragons are more than mindless predators. That you're a civilization with wisdom and power beyond imagination. You would sacrifice immortality and power for the chance to serve as a bridge between worlds. That's exactly what I would be doing either way, Marcus replied. But this way I remain human while carrying dragon knowledge. I become living proof that cooperation is possible between our species. Starweaver was quiet for a long moment, his scales shifting through thoughtful colors. Finally, he sang a brief harmonic that Marcus had learned meant deep consideration. The eldest must hear this proposal, but know that if you choose this path, the danger will be even greater. You will carry secrets that entire civilizations would kill to possess, and you will have no dragon strength to protect you. Then I'll need to be very careful about who I trust, Marcus said with a slight smile. Fortunately, I've learned a lot about reading character from watching dragons. The eldest considered Marcus's proposal for 2 full days, during which time the entire dragon city seemed to hold its breath. The ancient creature consulted with pack leaders from across the galaxy, their harmonic voices creating a complex symphony of debate that resonated through the station's living walls. Marcus spent those days learning everything he could about dragon culture, history, and capabilities. Starweaver and the Watchers taught him about the pack's true nature, not just as predators, but as guardians of cosmic balance who had prevented dozens of galactic catastrophes by eliminating threats before they could grow too powerful. Your Galactic Council sees only our hunts, explained Void Whisper, but they do not see what we hunt. 300 years ago, we destroyed a machine race that was converting entire star systems into computational matrices. 500 years before that, we eliminated a species that had learned to weaponize black holes. We are not random killers, we are immune system. Then why stay hidden? Marcus asked. Why not work openly with the other civilizations? Because knowledge of our true capabilities would create panic, then attempts to control or destroy us. Better to be feared as mysterious monsters than known as power that could reshape galactic civilization. On the 3rd day, the eldest reached her decision. She summoned Marcus back to the Great Chamber, where pack leaders from 17 different dragon cities had gathered via quantum communication. Their combined presence created a harmonic pressure that made the air itself seem thick with ancient authority. Your proposal has merit, human child, the eldest announced, but it requires modifications. You cannot return to your people empty-handed, bearing only words about dragon friendship. They would think you mad, or worse, they would think you weak. What do you suggest? You will carry proof of our alliance. Gifts that demonstrate both our goodwill and our power. Technology your species can understand and use but not replicate. Weapons that can protect human colonies from the threats we have identified. Knowledge that will advance human civilization by centuries without making them dependent on us. The eldest gestured toward a group of shapers who had been working on something in the chamber's depths. They emerged carrying objects that seemed to bend light around themselves. 3 crystalline devices no larger than Marcus's fist, each one pulsing with inner fire. Void hearts, the eldest explained. Power sources that tap directly into quantum foam. One of these could power a human colony ship for 1,000 years. More importantly, they can be integrated into your defensive systems to create shields that even our claws cannot penetrate. Marcus stared at the devices in awe. The implications were staggering. Humanity's expansion into space had been limited by energy constraints and the constant threat of more advanced alien civilizations. These void hearts could change everything. There's a catch, he said, recognizing the careful expression on Starweaver's great face. There's always a catch with gifts this powerful. Wisdom beyond your years, the eldest approved. The catch is this. The void hearts will only function in the presence of true cooperation between human and dragon. They are attuned to the harmonic frequencies of the soul bond. If humanity attempts to use them for conquest or aggression against peaceful species, they will cease to function. And if humanity proves worthy, then more gifts will follow. Eventually, direct cooperation. Perhaps even the voluntary transformations we discussed, for those humans brave enough to become bridges between our peoples. Over the next week, Marcus underwent intensive training that no human had ever received. Dragon navigators taught him to read the quantum currents that flowed between stars, giving him knowledge of safe routes through space that could cut travel time by months. Singers shared portions of their ancient oral history, including warnings about the threats emerging from the galactic rim. The most disturbing information came from the Watchers who had spent centuries monitoring the dark spaces beyond known civilization. Something was stirring in the void, not a single enemy, but a collection of forces that seemed to be testing galactic defenses, probing for weaknesses. They call themselves the Silence, Void Whisper explained, not because they do not speak, but because they leave nothing behind. Entire star systems they have touched simply disappear from our sensors as if they never existed. The pattern is accelerating. How long before they reach inhabited space? Marcus asked. 50 years, perhaps less. The packs have been preparing, but we cannot face this threat alone. We need allies with the creativity and adaptability that only younger species possess. We need humanity. When Marcus's training was complete, Starweaver offered him a final choice. The bond between us will persist regardless of distance. If you ever have need of the pack, sing the grief song I taught you and we will hear. But know that calling upon us will reveal your connection to dragons. Use this power wisely. What about you? Marcus asked. Will you remain here? No. The pack has chosen me to be your counterpart. The first dragon to openly work with human authorities. I will follow at a distance, hidden but watchful. If your mission succeeds, if humanity proves ready for alliance, then I will reveal myself to your leaders. The farewell ceremony was unlike anything in human experience. Thousands of dragons gathered in the station's vast central chamber, their combined voices creating a harmony that seemed to make the universe itself resonate. The song told the story of the soul bond, of compassion bridging impossible differences, of hope rising from the darkness between stars. Marcus found himself weeping as the music washed over him, not from sadness but from the overwhelming beauty of it. He was leaving behind creatures who had offered him immortality and godlike power, choosing instead the uncertain path of diplomacy and sacrifice. The journey back to human space took 3 weeks. Marcus traveled in a small courier ship provided by the dragons, its technology seamlessly blending dragon engineering with designs that would appear familiar to human engineers. The void hearts were secured in a specially shielded compartment, along with detailed technical specifications that would keep human scientists busy for decades. His destination was Haven Colony, one of humanity's newest settlements on the edge of Council space. The colony was struggling against Krathari raids and desperately needed both the advanced technology and the warning about the silence. More importantly, Haven's governor was Sarah Chen, Marcus's younger sister and one of the few people in human space who might believe his incredible story. As the ship dropped out of hyperspace near Haven's star, Marcus activated the quantum communicator the dragons had given him. Immediately, Starweaver's mental voice filled his mind, though the dragon was light years away. The first test approaches, Bond brother. Are you ready? Marcus looked at the displays showing 3 Crithari warships moving to intercept his courier vessel. The lizard-like aliens had apparently placed Haven under blockade, preventing supply ships from reaching the colony. As ready as I'll ever be, Marcus replied, powering up systems that no human ship had ever carried. Time to show them what human-dragon cooperation can accomplish. The lead Crithari ship opened fire without warning, its plasma cannons designed to disable rather than destroy. They wanted to capture him alive, probably hoping to learn how he had survived the prison ship incident. Marcus activated the Void Heart integrated into his ship's power systems. Immediately, defensive shields sprang to life around the courier vessel. Not the blue energy barriers familiar to most galactic species, but something that looked like crystallized starlight. The Crithari plasma beams struck the shields and simply disappeared, their energy absorbed and converted into power for the ship's other systems. Unknown vessel, came the transmission from the Crithari commander. You are carrying illegal technology. Surrender immediately or we will destroy you. Marcus smiled grimly and opened a channel to Haven Colony. Governor Chen, this is Marcus. I'm bringing you some gifts that are going to change everything. I hope you're ready for a very long conversation about dragons, ancient threats, and the future of humanity among the stars. The first shot in a war that would reshape the galaxy had just been fired, and it came from a ship protected by dragon technology and piloted by a human carrying impossible knowledge. The age of cooperation between the youngest and oldest species in the galaxy was about to begin. The battle near Haven Colony lasted exactly 17 minutes, but its consequences would echo across the galaxy for generations. Marcus's small courier ship, protected by dragon-engineered shields and powered by a Void Heart, proved completely immune to Crithari weapons technology. More shocking still, when the Crithari ships attempted to retreat, Marcus disabled them with surgical precision, using beam weapons that somehow passed through their shields as if they didn't exist. Governor Sarah Chen stood in Haven Colony's command center, watching the impossible battle unfold on her tactical displays. She had received her brother's transmission and was still struggling to process his claims about dragons and ancient alliances. But the evidence was undeniable. Marcus's ship was using technology that defied everything humanity knew about physics. Governor, her communications officer called out. We're receiving a priority signal from the Galactic Council. Admiral Vextar of the Crithari fleet is demanding to know who attacked his ships. Sarah looked at the display showing 3 disabled Crithari warships drifting helplessly in space, their crews alive but their vessels completely powerless. Her brother's ship sat among them like a predator, surrounded by fallen prey. Tell Admiral Vextar that his ships violated the Haven defense perimeter and fired on a diplomatic vessel, Sarah replied calmly. Also inform him that Haven Colony is now under the protection of new allies. Marcus's ship docked with the colony's main station 20 minutes later. Sarah waited in the docking bay with a full security detail, unsure whether she was greeting her beloved brother or some kind of imposter. The man who emerged from the courier ship looked like Marcus, but there was something different about him, a confidence and depth in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hello, Sarah, Marcus said, embracing his sister warmly. I know this is going to be difficult to believe, but we need to talk. All of us, he added, looking at the assembled security team. What I'm about to tell you concerns the future of our entire species. The briefing took place in the colony's secure conference room. Sarah had assembled Haven's senior staff, military advisors, scientists, and the colony's chief engineer. Marcus began with his capture and imprisonment, then moved through his encounter with Starweaver, the dragon rescue, and his time in the hidden city. The reaction was predictably skeptical until Marcus activated the quantum communicator, and Starweaver's mental voice spoke directly into their minds. People of Haven Colony, I am Starweaver of the Void Pack. What your Marcus tells you is truth. Our species have much to gain from alliance and much to lose if we remain apart. Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the colony's xenobiologist, nearly fainted. That's impossible. Dragons are non-sapient predators. They don't have cities or technology or... We have all of these things and more, learned one. We also have knowledge of threats approaching this galaxy that will require all civilized species to stand together. Your brother has chosen to become a bridge between our peoples. The question now is whether humanity is wise enough to walk across it. Marcus placed the 3 void hearts on the conference table. Even in the room's artificial lighting, they pulsed with inner fire that seemed to bend space around them. These are just the beginning, Marcus explained. Dragon technology that can revolutionize our energy systems, defensive capabilities, and space travel. But they come with conditions. They only work when we use them responsibly, in cooperation rather than conquest. Colonel Martinez, Haven's military commander, leaned forward intently. What about weapons? If we're facing the kind of threats you've described, we'll need more than defensive shields. The dragons have weapons technology beyond our comprehension, Marcus replied. But they won't share it until we prove we can handle the responsibility. They've seen too many species destroy themselves with power they weren't ready for. Over the next 3 days, Haven's scientists worked frantically to understand and integrate the dragon technology. The void hearts were installed in the colony's power grid, immediately tripling their energy output while reducing fuel consumption to near zero. More importantly, the quantum communicator allowed them to establish contact with dragon watchers throughout human space. The news they received was alarming. The mysterious silence had accelerated their probes into inhabited sectors, and several human colonies on the rim had gone dark without explanation. The Galactic Council was in denial, claiming the disappearances were due to natural disasters or pirate raids, but the dragons knew better. They test your defenses, Starweaver explained during one of their communications. The silence studies how each species fights, learns their weaknesses, then applies that knowledge during the final assault. They have done this to 17 different galaxies across the universe. Each time, the civilizations fall because they cannot unite against the common threat. How do we convince the other human colonies to believe us? Sarah asked. They'll think we've gone insane if we start talking about dragon alliances and cosmic threats. Marcus smiled grimly. We don't convince them with words. We show them. The demonstration came sooner than expected. A week after the technology integration, long-range sensors detected a massive Krathari battle fleet approaching Haven. 40 warships led by Admiral Vextar himself, intent on capturing the mysterious new human technology. Governor Chen, came the Admiral's transmission. Surrender immediately. You are harboring a wanted war criminal and illegal alien technology. Comply or we will take your colony by force. Sarah looked around the command center at her staff. In the past week, they had all been changed by contact with dragon knowledge. They understood now that they were part of something much larger than a single human colony. Admiral Vextar, Sarah replied, Haven Colony is under the protection of the Dragon Pacts. You may withdraw now, or face the consequences of your aggression. The Krathari Admiral's laughter echoed through the communication channel. Dragons? You expect me to believe that fairy tale? Prepare for bombardment. The Krathari fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, particle beams, torpedo barrages that should have reduced Haven to radioactive dust. Instead, their weapons struck shields that absorbed every joule of energy and converted it into power. For the colony's defensive systems, then, Starweaver arrived. The massive dragon materialized out of hyperspace, like a nightmare-given form, his scales reflecting the energy discharges around him as he moved through the battle zone with impossible grace. He wasn't alone. 3 other dragons emerged from the void, creatures so ancient and powerful that their very presence seemed to warp space around them. Admiral Vextar. Starweaver's voice spoke directly into the mind of every being in the star system. You have attacked beings under Dragon Pact protection. This is forbidden under laws that predate your civilization by millions of years. The Krathari fleet tried to flee, but dragon speed in space was beyond anything other species could match. Within minutes, every Krathari ship was disabled, their weapons offline and their engines dead. Not a single crew member was killed, but the demonstration of power was absolute. Let this be known throughout the galaxy, Starweaver announced, his mental voice carrying across subspace frequencies that would reach every major civilization. The Dragon Pacts have emerged from the deep void. We offer alliance to those who seek peace and cooperation. To those who choose conquest and aggression, we offer only justice. Admiral Vexitar's ship was tractored to Haven's docking facilities. where the proud Crethari commander found himself face to face with Marcus Chen, in the same conference room where dragon technology had been demonstrated days earlier. "You were supposed to be dead. Human," Vextar snarled, his scales pale with shock and fear. "I got better," Marcus replied calmly. "Thanks to friends you didn't know I had. Now we need to talk, Admiral, about the silence, about the threats facing all of us, and about whether the Crethari Empire is wise enough to join an alliance that could save us all." Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. "What alliance?" Marcus gestured toward the viewport, where Starweaver's massive form could be seen floating in space near the colony. "The alliance between the youngest species in the galaxy and the oldest. Between human adaptability and dragon wisdom. Between those who would preserve civilization and those who would see it thrive. And if I refuse? Then you return to your empire with a story no one will believe," Marcus said. "But you'll also return with a warning about what's coming from the galactic rim. The choice of how to respond will be up to your leaders." As Admiral Vextar was escorted back to his ship, Sarah joined her brother at the viewport. Outside, the dragon Starweaver had begun to sing. Not the grief song that had started everything, but something new. A song of hope, of alliance of two impossible species finding common ground among the stars. "What happens now?" Sarah asked. Marcus watched as the Crethari fleet limped away, carrying news that would reach every corner of the galaxy within days. "Now we prepare. The silence won't wait for us to build our alliance. They're coming, and when they arrive, they'll find something they've never encountered before. A galaxy united by bonds stronger than any weapon." In the depths of space, ancient sensors detected the quantum harmonics of Starweaver's song. Far beyond the galaxy's edge, in the cold darkness between stars, things that had Devo. 6 months after the Battle of Haven, the galaxy had become a very different place. News of the Dragon Alliance had spread through every star system, causing panic, wonder, and desperate political maneuvering as civilizations tried to understand what this meant for the balance of power. The Galactic Council had demanded emergency sessions to discuss the Dragon Crisis, but their debates had become meaningless. 3 more human colonies had been attacked by various alien fleets seeking dragon technology, and each time, dragons had appeared to defend them. The message was becoming clear. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's newest and weakest species. Marcus stood on the observation deck of the UHS Starbridge, humanity's first dragon-enhanced warship. The vessel was a marvel of cooperative engineering, combining human innovation with dragon craftsmanship in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. Its hull was grown rather than built, using techniques the dragons had perfected over millions of years, while its systems incorporated human creativity and adaptability. Beside him, Starweaver's physical form had been modified with biotechnology that allowed him to interface directly with the ship's systems. The dragon could pilot the vessel through hyperspace using senses that no artificial navigation system could match, while human crew members handled the complex tactical decisions that required rapid adaptation to changing circumstances. "The silence probe has reached the Tertius system," Starweaver reported, his mental voice carrying undertones of concern. 3 inhabited worlds, 40 billion souls. If we cannot stop them there, they will have a clear path to the galaxy's heart. Marcus studied the tactical display showing the positions of their combined fleet. 50 human ships enhanced with dragon technology, 25 actual dragons including some of the most ancient pack leaders, and a handful of vessels from other species brave enough to join the alliance. It was the largest cooperative fleet in galactic history, but still tiny compared to the forces the Silence had deployed against other galaxies. "Any word from the Council species?" Marcus asked. "The Nexians have agreed to provide intelligence support, but no ships. The Crethari Empire remains divided. Half want to join us, half want to capture our technology for themselves. The others, they still believe this threat can be negotiated with or ignored." Captain Lisa Rodriguez, the Starbridge's human commander, approached with the latest reports. "We've got confirmation from the advanced scouts. The Silence isn't just one enemy. It's 3 distinct forces working in perfect coordination." Marcus nodded grimly. The dragons had warned him about this. The Silence was composed of 3 different entities that had learned to function as a single organism across galactic distances. The Devourers consumed matter and energy, growing stronger with every world they destroyed. The erasers eliminated information, wiping all record of conquered civilizations from existence. The Shapers rebuilt reality itself, transforming conquered space into something alien and hostile to conventional life. Estimated arrival time at Tertius? Marcus asked. 18 hours, Rodriguez replied. The civilian evacuation is proceeding, but we're not going to get everyone out in time. We were not meant to save everyone, Starweaver observed sadly. We are here to prove that the silence can be stopped. If we succeed, the galaxy will unite. If we fail, they will assume our alliance was meaningless. The battle began at the edge of the Tertius system, where long-range sensors first detected the Silence Fleet. What they saw defied comprehension. Ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, weapons that fired beams of pure entropy, and defensive systems that turned enemy attacks into fuel for their own power. The Alliance fleet met them in the asteroid belt between the system's outer planets, using the rocky debris as cover, while they tested their enemies' capabilities. The initial exchange was devastating. Traditional weapons, even those enhanced with Dragon technology, had minimal effect on silent ships. Energy shields designed to stop conventional attacks were useless against weapons that attacked the fundamental structure of matter itself, but the Alliance had advantages that the Silence had never encountered before. Human tactical flexibility combined with Dragon precognitive abilities created battle strategies that adapted faster than the enemy could analyze. When the Silence ships moved to surround the Alliance fleet, Marcus ordered a maneuver that no single species would have attempted. Human ships dove directly into the enemy formation while Dragons used their natural void flight abilities to attack from impossible angles. Now, Starweaver called out as the Alliance ships reached the heart of the Silence fleet. Implement Protocol Omega. Every human ship in the fleet simultaneously activated their void hearts at maximum output, but instead of powering weapons or shields, they channeled the energy into a quantum resonance network that the Dragons had prepared. The combined mental power of 25 ancient Dragons, focused through human-built amplifiers and powered by crystallized quantum foam, reached out across space to touch something the Silence had never expected to encounter. The Dragons began to sing. It wasn't the grief song that had started Marcus's journey, or the hope song that had announced the Alliance. This was something older and more primal, the creation song that Dragons had sung when the universe was young, a harmonic pattern that resonated with the fundamental frequencies of space-time itself. The effect on the Silence fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions were suddenly forced into a single reality, their exotic physics failing as the Dragon song rewrote the rules of local space. Weapons that fired entropy beams found themselves constrained by conservation laws that the song made absolute. Most importantly, the coordination between the three Silence factions began to break down as their quantum communication network was disrupted by harmonic interference. For the first time in their existence across 17 galaxies, the Silence experienced something they had never encountered: defeat. The surviving enemy ships began to retreat, but Marcus had anticipated this. All human vessels activate pursuit protocol. Don't let them escape to report our capabilities. The chase lasted 3 days and covered half a dozen star systems. Human ships, their crews sustained by Dragon life support technology that could maintain peak performance indefinitely, hunted down every fleeing Silence vessel with relentless efficiency. Meanwhile, Dragons used their void flight abilities to track enemy ships through hyperspace, ensuring that none escaped to warn the main Silence fleet. When the last enemy ship was destroyed, Marcus found himself alone with Starweaver on the observation deck of the Starbridge. The Dragon's great golden eyes reflected the light of distant stars, and his mental voice carried a note of wonder that Marcus had never heard before. In 17 galaxies, across millions of years, no species has ever done what we accomplished here. The Silence has finally encountered something it cannot consume, cannot erase, cannot reshape: the bond between beings who choose cooperation over conquest. What happens now? Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Now the real work begins. The Silence will return in greater numbers, with new strategies designed to counter what they learned here, but they will find a galaxy united as it has never been before. The proof of what we can accomplish together will spread faster than their ships can travel. Through the quantum communicator, they could already hear the effects of their victory. Human colonies throughout the galaxy were reporting that other species were requesting technology exchanges and mutual defense pacts. The Crithari Empire had voted unanimously to join the alliance, and even the proud Nexians were offering to share their telepathic networks for early warning systems. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood once again in a dragon city, but this one was different. Built in the space between two human colonies, it was the first joint settlement of their species, a place where human children played among dragon younglings, where scholars of both races worked together to unlock the mysteries of the universe, and where the songs of both species blended into something entirely new. Starweaver had undergone another modification, this time adding human biotechnology that allowed him to experience emotions the way humans did, while retaining his dragon perspective and abilities. The reverse process had been offered to human volunteers, and surprisingly, hundreds had applied for the chance to become something new. The eldest sends word from the deep sanctuary. Starweaver reported as they walked through gardens where earth flowers grew alongside crystalline dragon art. The other packs are emerging from hiding. For the first time in 10 million years, dragons will take their place as open members of galactic civilization. And the silence? They mass at the galaxy's edge, but they wait. They study what we have become, trying to understand how creatures so different could forge bonds so strong. They will attack again, certainly, but when they do, they will face not just an alliance but a true symbiosis between species. Marcus paused beside a fountain where water and dragon fire danced together in patterns that defied physics but somehow made perfect artistic sense. Human children and dragon hatchlings played in the strange liquid light, their laughter creating harmonies that would have been impossible for either species alone.